Yes. So I'm not able to pull up anything, Dave, because the will just review the minutes. Okay, so we're starting up, and we'll start with meeting minutes. Morning, everyone. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so we met a month ago, June 3rd. Had a early summer week off. Don't know if we'll get another one of those this summer.
Yeah, looking back, a decent amount of short updates. We talked about the wild plant harvesting. And then amongst other updates, then went into Reed's Treasures update. Talked about upcoming discussion needed for closing the loop on Vermont Master Naturalist program support. And identified August as the time to do that. So can get that on agenda for next month. Then the final project review for the town hall field stormwater projects with Lisa. Looked at the VHCB letter of interpretation, so that's that piece, and then 8:30 was the agenda addition for the Fontaine subdivision.
And did that get approved by the DRB then?
I believe so, that was either the day, I think the night before I left or the night that I left for vacation, so I haven't followed up on that, but I didn't hear
It
anything.
seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, anyone have any comments or changes or amendments to the minutes?
No, looks good.
I'll move approval as drafted.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Laura. So all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted by Dave? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Can't see Kim.
Sorry, I turned off my camera because I feel like it makes my connection better.
No problem.
I'm fine with the minute.
Thank you. Okay, great. Minutes are approved. My computer is still lagging.
So conservation planner updates.
Yes,
You wanna
that's
do
what I
public
was expecting.
All right,
Should we do
updates.
public comments first?
Oh, any public comments?
Yes.
Love it.
I just wanted to share last night that the school board voted in favor of the MOU for the turf field at Heinsberg and CBU, 8-3. There were many people there speaking out against it from health, environment, legal, and cost perspective. And there was also a hydrology report that was really focused on one of their wells. And so that the hydrology firm gave a presentation. And I think had like some conflicting information. It went till 10 o'clock at night. So
I did not attend for that reason. I imagined it was gonna be very long.
it was very long. Yes, they went into the executive session and people waited until they came back out of the executive session to vote. So there were about 1,000 signatures against this that people have collected. And all but 2 comments were against the field. The 2 comments for the field were by Eli Lesser Goldsmith, who is the one proposing it. And the student body president spoke for it, for the students. Well, for some of the students.
From the
them,
perspective of the
From
student.
his perspective as president. One thing that was interesting to me, that for the hydrology was focused on the well, but then they sort of admitted that the runoff will go into a stormwater pond, which would then go into the stream. So it's sort of like, well, you know, maybe we won't contaminate groundwater, but we're gonna contaminate surface water.
Hmm.
So, I would like to request that we follow this. There's a lot of details that are not known, that school board is not making a lot of the details known, the MOU is not, people have not seen the MOU. The school board had said, we don't share contractual arrangements until it's signed. So that made a lot of people not very happy because it's really not known what is going in, what the arrangement is gonna be. Who's gonna have decision-making power over it. And the company will not submit a sample for testing. They just want to say like, it's PFAS free, you have to trust us, and
No.
so there's a lot of unknowns. So I'd like to keep it, like, make a request that we keep it on our sort of list of things to follow and talk about.
Was there also a toxicology report?
There was
shared?
not. There's no toxicology report. I would say there are three
Because
people
They said they were gonna pursue both.
that was requested, by community members to have a more holistic view of this versus the hydroexology, which is focused on well number 4, I think, or 6.
And sorry, this is, the well is for the school, this services the school or the town?
The town, yeah, it's, the well is, on the road, Shelburne Falls Road, but but CVU is in the water protection area for that well.
That makes sense.
The hydrology, hydroecology firm did not feel like the well was at risk. Because of several factors, but, it was an interesting report. They were sort of like, well, PFAS is everywhere, so like, what's one more field? And really focused on the legislation. We don't have good regulation around this. So go ahead. Like, you're not,
It's not clear
it
that,
wasn't like, again, my feedback was just because the regulation is poor and it is, I mean, regulation often does not meet the needs of people when exposed to consumer products, so.
If it's well to catch up, if it catches up.
Exactly, so just because it's not going to catch up or because it's poor right now doesn't mean that we should go ahead. So I think there's a lot of questions, but they, you know, it was a decisive vote on the school board's part.
Kim, do you have a comment in response to public comment here?
I just
Yeah.
wanted to let everyone know that somebody, I mean, and Dave or David, you can also give this update. I was just gonna update the commission on the email that we received and our response to it, which was just that somebody from Heinsberg and someone from Charlotte reached out and I think was upset maybe that we had decided not to write a letter like back in January or February when we weren't sure that it was our purview to do that because it's outside of Williston. And I just invited them to come to one of our meetings and told them the time. So one thing we could do is follow up on that, Lynn. I don't know if that's worth it at this point. It sounds like it's been decided and we're more in like a monitoring following stage, but I just wanted to give that update.
Well, I think what has been decided is that the school board has decided to sign a memorandum of understanding to accept this gift. It still has to go through regulatory hurdles. This Heinsberg Planning, Select Board and Conservation Commission are all against this. So there are other hoops, it's not like there are other hoops that they have to go through. And
it's
there's
just accepting of potential funds from a donor.
well,
It's basically like,
it is a memorandum of understanding, but nobody knows what that is. Nobody has read it. It's not,
Is that why they were in executive session, was to go through the terms of the MOU?
I guess so. I don't, we don't,
Kind of how our DRB, I think, does, they hear all the presentations and then they have an executive session to discuss how they want to do concerns and things like that with staff. And then they come out of executive session to vote.
And we
yeah,
do that too, right? Like we did that like with the subdivision when like the Marcottes are like talking or like
Well, hold on, we do executive session when there's sensitive real estate transactions that would involve the financing and, you know, of the
sure,
town.
but for all we know, that's what they're doing, right? Like there's like sensitive
Okay.
finance stuff, like
Presumably, yeah.
yeah.
I think it's safe to assume that the executive session was justified because they're talking about the terms and conditions of a major donation to the school, and the donor wanted to work those out. Private session with the school board
But then doesn't it have to be made public?
eventually. It should be, at least especially if it's gonna affect taxpayer
Yeah.
rates, it eventually, but maybe they get there last night.
the MOU will be, that'll be made public, and that they're asserting that this will not affect taxpayers because this is gonna be a moneymaker, because they're gonna have championships there, they're gonna charge for games, and so a lot of people have raised concerns about like, well, in 10 years, this has to be pulled up, it has to be disclosed. Then you have to put down a new field, or you have to reclimate, which is very expensive. I mean, by that time, it's like a brown field because of all the
They're
leach.
sort of committing to
So,
continue to be turf.
Yeah.
indefinitely.
yeah, and so they feel confident that this is gonna be a moneymaker and not a drain
Well,
on taxpayers, but I think that.
thank you for the comment, Lynn, but you know, we do have a full
Yeah.
agenda. I think that
That's,
the point that we would sort of take in this is that we have, per Kim's comment, we did get a, we got an email from, a member of the Heinsberg, and
I believe it's Charlotte Energy Commission.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission.
I think it was actually the Energy Commission.
The-
Just kind of, an individual from the Energy Commission was taking it upon themselves to
Right.
reach out.
So, I think appropriately, we invited them to participate or have a public comment, make a request in one of our upcoming meetings. You know, you wanna flag this for future meetings, I think that's fine, we can always add them as agenda topics if there's something worth talking about. You know, we can revisit whether or not at some point we wanna write a letter, you know, I think, I don't know that we need to necessarily decide that right now, but, you know.
Charlotte Conservation Commission did speak out against it. Just so,
Yeah.
Shelburne did not, Charlotte chose to do it, Heinsberg, obviously, it's in their back. It's against it.
I think the question that we had last time was like, where does our purview end, right? Like, and it's like so murky because it would like, I don't know. I don't want to like overstep our purview as outlined in the bylaws, but like we certainly have talked about crosstown initiatives or like coordinated management. So that's like a question mark in my mind.
Well, and Williston is the largest sending school to CVU. So people were talking about yesterday that like Williston has the most to benefit. I'm gonna put that in quotes because there are risks to athletes from using these fields. So we also have the most to risk from that perspective. But Heinsberg has to take most of the risk in terms of water quality, environmental, like. And they have a much smaller student sending population to CVU. So I do. I mean, it's not irrelevant, I get it that it's murky, but it's also not like irrelevant, it's highly impacts this town.
No, I don't think it's irrelevant at all. I don't have off the top of my head like what our charge is and if it specifies anything about town boundaries. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Let's,
is it appropriate for us to write the letter? Not do we think it's
Yeah.
important or not?
let's not spend a lot of time on that, because that would be a whole agenda item, I think, in itself, which we can certainly do later if. But I think it's great to sort of hear an update on where they're
Yeah,
at.
thanks for-
And so thank you for bringing that. Let's move on to the conservation planner update, because you do have a number of updates for us. Okay, thank you.
Right, thanks, Evan. Let's see, all right. After a day of historic underdog upsets, all of the expected teams won last night. That was us. Oh, sorry, wrong set of updates. Okay, real quick, so last time I talked about bios and headshots for the website. We landed on having thumbnail headshots for everybody and not having bios, since it's a little inconsistent, so I'll take those down. But if you don't have a thumbnail headshot, send me one and I can set that up. The town is signed and was countersigned a lease with Windswept Farm for the pasturing of the land that came into town ownership from the Glazer development project. So that I'm really pleased to report that project is wrapped up, and there's a little bit of back and forth just coming to terms that worked for everybody, but it was a good working relationship, and it was a pleasure to get to know the Mosses a little bit on that. So I'm really pleased to report that.
Is there any is there any details of what the structure looks like that are worth mentioning for us though?
It's essentially a formalization of the use of the land that was in previous existing. That was more or less set up under a handshake agreement with the previous private ownership.
Okay.
And so we codified that. The town introduced protective language as exists in most of our leases of this kind. So there's a formal arrangement, the kinds of terms around liability and that kind of thing. The top 15 acres is available for haying. The bottom portions are available for pasturing. And yeah, so that's
Okay.
more or less the gist of it.
Okay.
If you'd like to see that, I'm happy to share.
Was there a is that where the multi-use path along?
We'll go along the top 15
Yeah.
acres.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be interested to see it at some point, but no rush.
Okay.
Just curious.
Great.
A bunch of trail management activity going on. So the Allen Brook stream stabilization phase of that bridge repair project is out to bid right now. That was a big push to get that out before I left on vacation. Essentially, I have one shot to make this happen in the window that we were approved, since all the permitting is finished. And so we'll find out, bids are due next Wednesday, and we'll find out whether we get one that's affordable to the town. If we get one, we've got a chance of making this happen. Once that stream stabilization phase is complete, the resurfacing of the structure is no longer bound by the time requirements, so it can happen later in the fall or winter as the rest of the project details and funding come together. If we don't get an affordable bid, we may have to we may end up in a situation where we have no choice other than to push to spring.
Yeah, Reed and I have a question too.
Yeah, refresh my memory, is the reason that we aren't bound by the time restrictions for the second phase because we don't need the heavy machinery to be down in the,
Yeah,
okay, it's all like service.
yeah, exactly.
Work, okay.
Okay. So if we only get one bid, is that, but it's affordable, is that enough? Or do we have requirements that we need two bids?
That's a good question. I don't have that procedural answer on top of my head.
The request is out there publicly,
The
right?
practice out there publicly, yeah, it's been shared.
Should be
in
sufficient.
several bites. I did a walkthrough of the site on Monday with 2 interested contractors.
Okay.
So
To start, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
see
good.
what happens. Isaac, the trail steward, is busy working on a fix for the flooded boardwalk at the Allen Brook Nature Trail confluence, stream confluence. So he's elevating the floating flooded boardwalk structures there, so that they'll be level with the surface of the bridge. So they should be above water in most scenarios. It's not entirely clear that the Beaver Lodge is active at this time, but they've come and done quite a bit in the last year, so it certainly seems like it's appropriate measure, and the pond has still got enough water that parts of the structure to be floating.
Sorry, you said Allenbrook confluence.
Yes, so if you take the Elmbrook Nature Trail,
Yeah, you mean where the Beaver Dam? What?
Yeah,
Over
where
down
the-
that one, okay.
Yeah.
Alright, I was just confused by confluence, that's all.
Yeah, it's where two streamlets, whatever, come together and.
Right.
You can't get there from
I
Allenbrook.
wasn't sure which confluence.
right, yeah. Fair
There's a
enough.
lot going on, yeah.
What you meant, like. the-
It's
Winooski?
this little X right here.
Yeah.
Now the town purchased this parcel, I don't, or it was conveyed to them, I don't know the full history there. A number of
Yeah.
years ago, and then extended the nature trail from this loop. Up through residential neighborhoods here and there. So this little trail thing is not
Yeah.
accurate.
Got it. There's the wayside exhibit right there too, on that bridge, that one.
What's that? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
And the only way to get there right now is through that private subdivision to the north, right? Because you can't.
Yeah, we have permission from Creek's Edge to park right
Oh, okay.
here in this little access trail, private access trail, so we have permission to use that.
And there's also a trail down right there. but
Yeah,
I don't know
this-
whether,
This is public access easement, but it's a private drive, so I just reached out to ask.
yeah, okay.
It's always good to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's,
I always wonder whether it's public, that other one, because it's like, it feels like you're going through somebody's yard,
Yeah.
which kind of are, and I'm always like,
sketchy.
I think this is public, but it feels kind of weird.
yeah, that's true for a number of our connections that go through
Yeah,
public areas, and something to think about. Maybe we can improve signage for the future of that.
yeah, or just, yeah, something on the side of the sidewalk that helps people know, yes, you can go here.
Yeah.
So, on a related note, has anyone else seen the Beaver Dam on Skunk Hollow Road?
No.
Just as you go up the hill, there's a drive to the right. Pull off on that drive, and you will see the most beautiful, huge beaver dam. That thing is enormous, and he has been working on it all spring. And it's flooded an entire field behind it.
Nice.
He is doing
Where is this?
amazing work. Skunk Hollow Road.
By the
Want to
way,
give Kim
Is that in
PTSD?
Williston?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, it's
No, just
By
across
drive, you
River-
mean the one off of Tyler Place?
River Road.
That first right turn, that's like a half mile up.
yeah. Yeah. And it is, my son and I came back from it, we were like doing a hike in the spring and we pulled off and we were just admiring it forever. It was really impressive. So if you want to see a really good engineer.
I'm talking like Hoover Dam level here.
Yes, I'm not exaggerating. And the water behind it is just like so flat, and I mean, he's got like probably a good 6 foot headroom on that water level right now, and it is holding steady, like really impressive.
Looks like that beaver's got
That's
lots of room to
fantastic.
work too, so. that's
Yeah. And you can even see the den in the middle of the pond, like it is just like, it is textbook.
we'll have to see it.
Yeah, Dave. Oh, I'm
Oh, sorry, I'm
Just go to the next.
Oh, you're going to the next thing.
Keeping going.
Gotta keep us on
He's
track
staying, he's
here.
staying on topic, Mr. Gallo.
I wanted to talk about beavers. All right, what's next?
Okay,
Beaver
so next, Isaac is also coming up, gonna be working with Winooski Valley Parks District to replace this boardwalk here. On the
Smoker.
Smoker Trail, which, although we haven't formally closed it, that one's in pretty rough shape. Some rotted out boards really needs to be replaced, so that's gonna be happening this month as well. Hopefully, and that is 2 or 3 big projects in motion that I'm really glad to have some action.
Oh, yes, nice.
We're starting to get on top of the trail maintenance issues. So then, then we've got an Eagle Scout who's putting together a kiosk for Sucker Brook Hollow
Oh, nice.
to replace the sign that rotted out and was removed last year. Cool. So that should be going in late July as well.
Who's the Eagle Scout?
David Nesbitt.
Nice, I was just talking to him
Oh,
yesterday.
really? Yeah, he's a nice kid.
Yeah, he is.
And
And that was the site where we spoke to the neighbors about putting in.
yes,
Tiny
Yeah.
library, is that, have you had any further
I
conversation?
haven't had any further conversation with them. I don't know if there was
think they were
summer
waiting for the-
vacation.
And they were waiting for the new kiosk to go into then, like,
Oh, yeah, that
think
that
about
could be so.
placement and stuff.
If I don't hear back in the next
Yeah.
month or so, I'll follow up.
They seem pretty motivated, so I imagine they'll reach out when they're ready.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's some trail management updates. There's volunteer parsnip management season is in motion, and Terry did a lot of work at Catamount while I was away, and Reed and Lynn worked with Chapin as well while I was away to get started on parsnip control in the village, and I understand pulled a bunch along the rec path, which is
We
fantastic.
got more done than we
Yeah.
set out to do. We were just gonna start in. We ended up doing all the way from Federated Church parking lot to Old State Road. Just not doing the golf course and that sort of thing.
That's great. So that season continues for the next couple of weeks. Obviously the seeds start to come in, but we can still pull. So now's the time to kind of get the word out. I wasn't able to really do much promotion since I had vacation coming up.
Mhm.
Awkward timing for getting this work started, but we were able to get it started. It was great. I'll see if I can do some volunteer support as well, try to get some new interested people involved.
There's that like second phase of pulling, like the first pull, and then, yeah, like a month later, you see all the ones that were missed or that somebody, that they were too small. You
Yeah.
couldn't see them when you were going through, and so there will be another opportunity to do proactive, where it's less volume, and it might be good to do like a volunteer new folks orientation type thing where they can come and see how to do it and what
Sorry,
are
which
the
plant,
mechanics.
which plant is this one?
The poison parsnip.
Question, when you say pull, are you actually pulling or are you,
We're actually pulling.
oh,
Yes,
because that disturbs soil, I just.
Yeah, we, with,
Mm,
if you don't pull, then the taproot often resprouts a new thing, is what I understand.
Well, they're biannual, so once that flower head is gone, that plant is dead. I mean, it's not gonna come back.
There are two strategies that
Yeah,
our volunteers have used for many years. Terry uses the parsnip predator shovels.
Right.
And she works, which is one way to do it. Chapin has kind of developed and shared his techniques,
Okay.
which is, yeah,
okay,
which is more direct pulling. He's found that works for him and other
Yeah,
volunteers have
okay.
found that works too, with appropriate precautions. So
That it has to be done so it's pretty loose. Like it, as,
Oh, yeah.
like there were certainly some that even when it was wicked soggy, when we did it, there were certainly some we had to go back, Chapin went back out with a shovel to get some others, but. What were you saying about the soil disturbance? You were thinking it was better to do this strategy.
I just know that with poison parsnip especially, because those seeds can't plant themselves. And there's so many of them around
Yeah.
that
seed stock would
once
be-
the soil's disturbed, they're like, okay, thank you for planting.
Interesting, yeah.
That's a good thing for us to keep discussing and see if we wanna.
Yeah, I know Terry does this. You know, takes it at the root so that it's not pulled. And I just take snippers and cut the heads off when I see them.
I do know early enough in the season, if you cut up high, the heads, they will send
They
out.
will
new
send it
sets
again,
from
yeah,
down
I
low.
know,
So it's a little,
You gotta-
it's tricky,
it is tricky, you gotta kind of do it when it's,
Yeah.
late in the,
yeah, just late enough that it's not gonna.
yeah,
Reset new flowers, yeah,
right,
so, yeah, these are
Interesting.
things that. As we talked about the. Invasive
right,
species planning, this is the type of stuff we'll wanna. Get down, like, depending on the time of year, these are the strategies we will
Mhm.
coach
right,
volunteers to
exactly.
using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right, so last thing I put on, want to put on your radar in terms of updates is the Catamounts Community Forest Committee commissioned a invasive species management plan for Catamount Community Forest. That was completed by Bob Himes of Habitat Restoration Solutions down in Heinsberg. And
So they paid
provides,
for that.
what's that?
They paid for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, out of the stewardship fund for the forest.
Yep.
And so that identified a number of management units and a sort of prioritization for those units. For how to attack keeping the invasive species spread at Catamount at check and gradually working to reduce it in problem areas. So I put a link to that in the agenda. I encourage you to check it out. It's trying to put together any kind of comprehensive plan for a 400-acre parcel is, you know, really impossible in one go. So in many ways, this is the start of having comprehensive planning for catamounts. There's going to be work to do as this translates over into implementation and adding more mapping and information, identifying additional priorities. And Bob emphasized strongly that with invasive species management work, you really need to be, there's no plan you could write that would remain perfect as time goes on. And so, although the committee really wanted a 10-year schedule that would just kind of tell them what to do, he emphasized that it really needs to be an integrated pest management kind of system with lots of check-ins and reevaluations, and at minimum, a 5-year reevaluation schedule is more appropriate than 10. And so it was a useful exercise. I definitely encourage you to check that out. And I was able to bring on board Stephen Blaisdell, a new invasive species contractor, to put in an initial push of work with some funding that the town forest had available for FY26 just before I left.
He's a VMN, sorry.
Yeah, I read it, and a couple things, I don't know, Kim's on the Catamount, right? So.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if her connection is still.
You're right,
You're right back, okay, well, maybe I'll just tell her later, make sure she heard it, but. One of the things that I noticed looking at it was. It mentioned that. So the ask was sort of, okay, your budget is $5,000 a year. So $5,000 a year, like, how would you structure a 10-year schedule to manage it? And maybe the right question would have been, if we have. $50,000, what would be the most efficient and effective way to spend that money? Because he mentioned in the report that. Sort of offhand, he just kind of said, like, keep in mind that you would be better suited to spend more money now and then trail off. Because the spread is gonna make it more expensive, but he just kind of said it in passing, and I was hoping that he would have said, here's the schedule that you've asked me to build. Here's the schedule I would, if I had the same amount of money and it didn't matter when you spent it, I would spend $15,000, then 10, then 10, then 2, like maintenance stuff after that. So I thought that was notable and something that we'll have to think through on our townwide planning for invasive management is what are the levers that we can pull to try as much as possible to front load areas where we want to do stuff so that we don't spend more money in the long run.
This is a total pie in the sky comment, but I agree with that 100%. And I think the pie in the sky part is, I think it'd be great for the town to set up, like, similar to the ERF, a invasive species management fund or account or whatever, that the town will contribute to. And then when there's a new invasion that arrives, there's money on hand to deal with it.
Yes, it's one more fiscal year. Yeah. No, money grows on trees.
I set that up for us and it's been great, but different scenario.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more with the invasive stuff, but David and I did talk about that this fiscal year as far as looking at the finances and the ask for budget. And like right now, we have a little bit of squishiness in which buckets we want to use for invasive funds. You know, like the trail maintenance budget can be used a little bit for it. There's like, in the past, we've had like a land stewardship line item, I think, in some fiscal years. I don't know what that was for, but like we can sort of think through how we would want to do that.
Why don't we why don't we transition into
Yeah.
the subcommittee updates,
Sure.
and the short-term invasive action plan?
Okay, can you put that?
I can't, yeah.
Um, Thank you to Reed and Lynn for doing so much work on this too.
We had a nice call about it instead of our
Yeah, my-
regular meeting.
Yeah, my computer, actually, my power went out
Mhm.
and they're like, I don't know where she went, but let's keep going.
And then the text scanned through, yeah.
And then I finally was able to text them saying sorry. Anyway, this is short term, so kind of, this is what we're doing now. As we work on a long-term plan. And, we can just go through it. We have
Yeah.
a long-term goal of establishing a comprehensive invasive species management plan. New invasive species are being introduced to the Williston landscape. New infestations of existing invasive species are spreading across the Williston landscape. Whereas delaying intervention exposes Williston to snowballing financial and ecological risks, and whereas limited budget has been allocated for contracted invasive management for FY 27. We wanted to adopt this short-term plan to guide a rapid response using a combination of volunteer staff and contracted labor that reduces risk to Wilson in the near term. So the most important for actions is the early detection and removal of emergent species. So we wanted to just ask if the summer trail steward could just let us know if they see any novel invasive.
Which I think is already the instruction, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of what
Right.
Isaac's doing. Okay.
He knows what.
Well, I mean,
That's
as
what
much as you can, I mean, it's not
I
his
mean,
primary.
Right, and it's
thing.
not,
Yeah.
we don't want him to go look for them, it's just if, when
Right,
he's out and
right,
about.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Direct the conservation planner to engage with providers of invasive management services. Contract using available stewardship funds to address the highest value restoration projects. Taking into account likelihood of spread, so we're not saying which ones yet. And Dave, you can let us know, if it's even possible with your schedule, because I know you're really busy. So we're thinking knotweed. I don't know how much I'm not involved with the group of Vermont Master Naturalists who were addressing that. So I don't know how much has been done or what still needs to be done with the knotweed.
So yeah, there were some VMNs who did a little bit of a mapping project. They identified
mapping.
knotweed infestations primarily along roadways.
Uh,
So that was a nice, helpful information gathering
okay,
step. And in terms of starting to address this, there's sort of two things we can do. One is there's a couple of infestations that are on town land. I think I know maybe three of them. One in the Allen Brook, just north of the fire station. There's one at Catamount along the roadside and one along the roadside at my pond conservation area. Those we can likely put together. I can get some quotes and probably get somebody working on it this season. I think that should be a great budget.
Mhm.
Outside of that, where we know there's not weed, it's a right of way or on someone else's property, we have to get a permit from the state and permission of landowner
mhm.
to do something about it,
to do anything about that.
or work with the landowner to have them do something about it, cause.
Yeah, so
It'll spread, yeah.
it's a bigger question and set of challenges, which I've been able to kind of figure out what the steps broadly would need to be, but I haven't had really opportunity to engage further in like contacting anyone or getting a permit together.
So that's the long term.
So that's kind of long term, but hopefully not too long term.
So are we,
Okay.
can we cut it now? Like.
I
On
wouldn't,
the art places, like my understanding is you cut it, well, there's. It seems like knotweed management is not clear, like the best way to do it, I've seen different things. One way is cut it in July, cut it in August, and then in September, you're putting herbicide on it. The reason being like cutting in July and August or the rhizomes put all this energy into the plant and then you cut it and then it sends up more shoots, you wanna exhaust the rhizome. And then this
The
And-
foliar spray.
And then the foliar spray is when it's taking things back in the fall before frost. Other people say like, don't cut. Or don't, like I've seen don't cut, because then it'll just spread
Yeah.
further.
Well, and the
And then
clippings,
I've
I
also
think.
seen
Yeah.
don't put foliar spray on and only cut, so
Well, we have to figure out best
I think
practices.
we have to figure out
in the long
management,
term.
but we might be, in the meantime, we might be missing opportunity.
Mhm.
I'm not too concerned about that because, in general, groups that have experimented with, chemical treatment have shown high efficacy with knotweed. It can definitely be treated in, with chemical
But then we'd
application.
probably be talking about a professional.
Yeah, from a
We're talking-
professional.
Yeah.
But most of what I've read, even from whether you're doing manual methods or anything, is once you cut, you need to be committed to
Oh.
consistent.
Because it gets
Like
angry.
mowing lawn.
Because, yeah, exactly, once you cut, as you said, Lynn, then that plant understands, okay.
Right, we gotta
it's time
go,
to move to a new,
like a lot of
area.
invasives do.
So the rhizome begins to spread out.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't recommend any sort of preemptive cutting before we have like a professional on board to recommend
Yeah.
a course.
Yeah,
And those are, they're relatively small patches, the ones I'm talking about, so I don't think it'd be, it's not, the massive
Mm,
Forest.
forest
Like in
of
Stowe.
knotweed.
Which is
Yeah,
why we need to
exists
do
a
it
lot.
now. Yeah.
I'm struggling with a small patch in at our in Northfield
Yeah,
that is really. I mean, it's just year after year after year, and then what's coming up is tiny, and then foliar sprays difficult, and it's difficult to get somebody to come that time of year to do any work.
Yeah,
yep, it may be, but.
This
yeah,
seems
these are-
to
these are good points.
reaffirm what we've put in here, which
Yeah,
is on the
exactly.
short-term plan is like, we know it's a problem. And we want David to work with professionals to figure out like, what could we do soon?
with those small.
Yeah.
All right, and we also, because I know you mentioned it, you were
Yeah.
concerned about it.
I think, I think it's a little of both, it's clearly. I think it's been in the Ellenbrook a lot longer than people realize,
Yeah,
but we don't know the extent of its spread, and we don't know. Yeah, absolute risk of this species,
mhm,
so I think this is one where I'd like to get in touch with, Noah Hoffman from the state on, and, they have it on their. Broader, list of 40 species on, invasive.org for the state,
Yeah.
but it's not on a number of the lists that, you see on
Right.
various websites for invasive species in Vermont, so. I think it's one where it's not present across the landscape broadly, and so the information you get is kind of mixed. But for that reason, it's probably a watch species and we should probably do something about it, so. I want to get someone involved on that, I think that can happen in short term. And then
Okay.
most likely it'd be do some mapping and treat what we know. But it's all aquatic systems, so we'll have to get
Right.
wetlands involved in, it's just, yeah, it's a priority, we should get on it and.
but how, yeah, so
Yeah,
by starting to investigate best management practices, exactly, okay, perfect. Okay, so now established species targeting of high impact sites. Go down just a little, back down, sorry,
oh,
to
sorry,
the top.
back up,
Sorry, back, yeah.
Number 2 in the heading, just.
Established species target, okay, direct the conservation planner to engage with providers of invasive management services, contract using available stewardship funds, grants, et cetera. So poison parsnip, I mean, we are addressing that right now.
It's listed first because it's uniquely challenging for humans.
It's, yeah, challenging for humans. I don't know how much of an invasive species it actually is.
It's pretty
Is
sure
it-
it's invasive. I mean,
Is it-
it's certainly noxious, and I think it's listed as invasive or not native.
Yeah.
Well, it's not native, but is it invasive? Yeah,
it's listed as invasive, it's not,
Okay.
it's on the list,
because it takes
terrestrial
over.
species, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
okay.
it's so prolific, but. I think what you're getting to, Laura, is, within broader term invasive, and, invasive is defined by people based on pretty our understanding of known ecological, agricultural,
Right.
economic impacts and harms
And
to
public health.
Yeah, exactly. And and
So
public
that public health certainly.
So in this
is
public
important.
health, also agriculture, its spread is so prolific. It is the kind of species that, you can compare it to some species that have the ability to invade like a forest, and it's a very
Mhm.
different ecology. Like chervil, you'll see it on roadsides, fields, places. It's a disturbance species, but it spreads so prolifically in those environments, and those happen to be the environments where people do most of their living.
Right,
So it would definitely fall into that.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Um. And coordinating with Public Works, which is something else, because I know Bruce Hort is retiring. So we'll get a new person, and it's a great time to coordinate with whoever that new person is, and also the fact that Bruce has been the tree warden. And for years, I get these tree mails from, it's the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program with all this money available, and so I'm like, wow, we could really do some good projects with this. So I'm like, Bruce, are you applying for these grants? He's like, yeah, I've taken care of it. We're getting trees to replace the ash, basically.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, street tree work.
street tree work, so, which is great. So we just need to know, first of all, if that new person is going to be the tree warden as well. If that's part of their job description.
Yeah, actually, that's something that would be wonderful to know, David, as the process proceeds, if you're able to find out whether the new person is gonna do that, or whether there's been talk in the past about getting somebody with an arborist or forestry background to be the tree warden.
I haven't heard any whisperings of that in the position at this time. So I'll ask. My guess would be that the job description is mostly the same, but
Yeah,
happy to ask.
All right, okay, so coordinating with them will be, after that hiring. Buckthorn and honeysuckle, we know that they're kind of widespread. We see them throughout a lot of the forest, especially at Catamount. And thinking about how to limit spread and thinking about high impact locations. And one area we thought, especially with the bench coming in, is why not look at the Five Tree Hill Lookout, because VAST could actually help, since they can use chainsaws with when we decide where to put the when you decide where to put the bench. We could actually take out some of the invasives there, because some of them are really like trees. And the groomer used to be able to go around the whole bench that's there.
Really?
Now, yes,
Wow.
the entire way around it to groom for VAST.
and now they can't, yeah.
And now it's just, it's been kind of filled in by all those invasive plants. Mainly honeysuckle and buckthorn. So anyway, that was just an idea, and I could arrange that being part of the Hillhawks. When we want to do that. So, and then maybe we could get
We
some.
did have we wanna do the bench with a tree. At the same time, and so we have talked about doing like clearing of all of that.
So maybe we can work together on when that happens and have a work day.
Yeah,
Okay, I just need a heads up to put that out to people. Okay, and then,
We didn't go into doing every single invasive
No.
right now.
and should we, I mean, I know that in Richmond, there's a Vermont Master Naturalist group. That are doing a project as part of their training, learning how to take Phragmites out of places. And I know that Reed has mentioned that there are small populations of Phragmites in Williston on town land that we could also do that with. I was thinking, if anybody's interested in learning how to do that, I could send you their schedule. They're doing work days from now through September. In Richmond.
Richmond, is that where they're
Richmond.
doing it?
Yeah, Richmond, so I could just send that. Okay, and I also put that on Front Porch Forum.
Mhm.
And Susanna the person that's heading it said, wow, we got 4 people from Williston right away. So there are at least 4 people in Williston who are really excited about it. So finding out who they are is good too, would be good too, right? I can do that. Anyway, I think the other. I think we can,
Yeah, this plan, because this is intended to sort of give direction to David and also to any of our volunteer programming. In the short term, we didn't go into detail on all the different invasives that are more established because a more formal, long-term invasive management plan is gonna need to look at each of those species and decide kind of what bucket does it fall into? Do we even do anything about it, or do we just say, no, we're gonna put our money elsewhere? Or if we're gonna do something about it, is it in certain locations, and is it contracted, is it volunteer, like how do we approach it?
so, yeah, and public education is really important, because I think people could do a lot on their own land. And I know Chapin's been doing this, let's see, and just providing informational materials for homeowners, landowners, which I did a Green Up Day with Lynn. Posting on Front Porch Forum, I mean, when people think of it, they could do that. I did that with the Phragmites, and it looks like people really kind of follow that and think, okay, yeah, I'd like to do that. I'm gonna work on the HOA language this summer and make sure that we have that for, especially because the Marcotte said if you had some language, it would be great to use it, so.
Well, I think we promised I would provide something.
Yes, so I can do that and maybe put it on August, we can just look at that language. Okay.
That's a WCC action item to
Okay.
have a board that you guys can use.
I'll come up with something and maybe pass it by Reed and Lynn, and then we can have it, okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great
Long-term
update.
planning basically just says to, like, we should think about how we want to approach it. Like, are we
Yeah.
hiring somebody like, we did with Catamount
Yeah,
to sort of give us the extra boost that we need to get it done versus being in the same place 12 months from now.
yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention that June 16th. There's a brand new, it's not even called a noxious weed quarantine list, you know that? It's just a new 3-tiered system that the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets has put out, so that's actually handy to know. But that just came out, and so it's all brand new information about noxious weeds.
Notice.
Yeah.
The state of Vermont, I don't fully understand why, and certainly don't endorse it, but they are also no longer using the term invasive.
Okay, they're using noxious.
I'm not sure if noxious replaces invasive or if they're using not native, or I don't think they're even using that one at all.
Interesting.
Why?
I'll find that out, yeah.
That's a good question.
State of Vermont, they've changed.
There's been over the years, there's been a number of like sort of more broadly their philosophy, like philosophical attempts to reconcile or rebrand the language around invasive species. If you go back to the history of invasion ecology, the more or less founder of the discipline was using the language of war and conflict, human conflict, to describe the fight against invasive biological explosions and that kind of thing. As people have kind of waded into that over time, there's been concern about, does this language bring in any kind of like xenophobic thinking to the way we think about introduced species? Does that relate to the way we think about people and that kind of thing? And brands about where these plants come from, terms about where these plants come from, Japanese knotweed, Asiatic bittersweet, is there bias involved in all these things? And it's a very interesting philosophical question. People have very different opinions on it.
Like, we're not trying to eradicate European bees.
Right.
Right.
I've engaged with that literature quite a bit and thought, my personal opinion is that although there's been a lot of very earnest attempts to reframe the language, it's not necessarily time that is well invested right now. That's just my personal opinion, because you can replace the term invasive with any number of complicated euphemisms, but there's nothing that communicates the ecological role of those species as clearly and succinctly as invasive does. And we can call them non-native introduced species with ecological impacts. But it actually, at some point, starts to dilute what we're talking about and adds confusion to, that's just my personal opinion. The folks at the state have done a lot of work around inclusion. There's a lot of, I think, great points that they've made on that side, but they've landed on, rebranding, as kind of their strategy. So I encourage you to check out, different opinions and posts, and it's certainly an interesting area, but in my opinion, the term invasive is not really going away in the broader discourse, and that's just my personal opinion. There's not the silver bullet that people have been looking for to replace the term is not really out there.
Yeah. All right.
I agree that the silver bullet isn't out there. I'll just add that, like, I think a lot of the concern about impact has come from, like, when we do outreach with groups of like school kids and we're like, we're going to pull out the thing that's not from here and throw it away because it's a problem that it arrived. And then there's like immigrant kids in that classroom, right, that are being exposed to that way of thinking that has demonstrated harm, right? There's a lot of good research about the impact on human beings.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think it's less like, do we need to call these things something different, and more like, how do we talk about this process and what it applies to and like what it doesn't apply to, right? Because migration of species is constant. And so there's a lot of nuance, I think, in how we talk about that and what it means for like human beings that might be, seeing themselves in the language of invasion ecology.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ken.
Thank you, Kim. I do want to wrap up our short-term action plan draft. Thank you so much for the three of you putting in a lot of work for it. Looks awesome. Anything to close with right now?
Do we need to approve it, like maybe,
Is there a? I don't know if we're gonna approve it today, I have some suggestions.
not today, but yeah, okay,
If I could get my hands on like to it.
that'd be great, I will send it.
Thank you. Can you scroll down just a tiny bit there as well, so the ending? I can't remember what it
Thanks,
said there. Yeah. Oh, yes, interdepartmental approach that going like long-term, we need to have better coordination between departments in order to be effective. And the volunteer conversation will play into this because volunteer work will be critical to the number of person hours that are required to do this type of work.
And
And
for our next topic,
helping people do it on their own land reduces the reintroduction issue as well as helping them on their land, so.
And businesses.
all right. So,
Eric's gonna give us comments.
Eric wants to provide some comments. I think you guys, I'll just say I appreciate the sort of short-term emergent species identification and then the longer term, focusing on, I agreed with that perspective of let's focus on like the publicly owned lands for those settled species or well, however you phrased it. Just thought it looked really good. So I don't have any notes. Let's go to the volunteering draft memo then. Seems we won't be voting on that.
Where's that?
It's in the agenda, and it was,
Send it out.
It was in.
Follow-up email?
Yeah, follow-up.
it was in a follow-up email, but it's now also
Yeah.
later in the agenda, so you might need to refresh your page.
The agenda.
I was going through the email, okay.
And this is still like a drafty stage. We're not, I don't think looking for adoption of anything today, really looking for feedback because there are many different ways we could approach this. Kim and Len and I spoke last month in June about it, and Lynn had written up a bunch of great notes from our conversation, and then this is trying to turn that into something that is more in the structure of like, what would a memo look like that we would send? And who would we send it to? So. At this point, we've drafted it as something that would be directed to the select board, since the select board is the one who's deciding. What they want to see in a volunteer policy, but we have to remember that the process is that the town manager's office is drafting based on their feedback. And their feedback has been somewhat non-specific so far. But I expect that this is gonna come back to the select board again with some changes around issue areas that they pointed out. And so this is our opportunity as the WCC to let them know what we think is needed to be successful in the conservation space.
Yeah.
Cam and Len, does that sound like the right context for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a section of this memo that you are proposing can just be cut and pasted into the draft volunteer policy?
No, so essentially the entire, the crux of it seems to be that right now, as the volunteer policy initial draft was presented. Conservation work is specifically called out under section 4. Section 4 is article 4 of the policy as being excluded from what's considered a department. What's the actual naming that's used? Department managed volunteer program. As compared to volunteer programming operated by the library and by Parks and Rec. And so it basically says this is how department managed volunteer programs can operate. They don't have to comply with Article 5. They do their own thing. And then it says conservation volunteering is not a department managed program. So in that section, Article 4, it also lays out these are the things that make something a department managed program, and it also says that new programs can be created and existing programs can evolve into department managed. And so what we're trying to do with this memo is help lay the groundwork for conservation programming to become a department managed. Some of the benefits of doing that are that if it kind of also qualifies for a carve out, it means that there's more autonomy for the planning staff to shape the program and adjust the scope of work and adjust the protocols and things like that. So that it is just a little bit more nimble and can be really effective. And so what we've done is we've looked at first, we just lay out examples of existing programs, and I realized a grand omission, which is we don't have our Adopt a Trail program listed here that we've done in the past, but basically we just said, here's examples of programming that has been done over the last 10 years. And then
Going back up to.
yeah, this one, so those were 4 examples, but the Adopt a Trail would be a 5th, and there could be even more that we haven't enumerated yet. So we're basically trying to say, hey, look, we do have existing programs. These are established things that have been done for multiple years, and this is what they look like, kind of making them discrete. So for instance, I separated out tree planting from watering because a lot of times the volunteers who help water plantings are not necessarily the ones who are doing planting, and it's completely different in terms of the equipment that's used, the scope of work. It is different. And then down below that, we said, okay, here are the criteria that the draft policy. So that starts with the bullet at the very bottom of what you see. Here are the criteria that have been laid out in the draft policy for what can be a department managed volunteer program. And here's how we either think we currently comply or meet those requirements, and here's where we think there may be a gap and what we would like to see happen. So that's how the document is structured. And we're looking for feedback about whether the commission feels like we're headed in the right direction, because we can put more more subcommittee time into trying to get this more polished. We can meet with David to make sure that all of his experience and ideas about how this program could look into the future could be. And then Kim, do you want to talk about, oh, well, I guess it was one of the bullet points was so the last bullet point, if you can scroll down to the last bullet point, David, this is a kind of an important one, is the last criteria in the draft policy is that it's owned and administered by a specific department as part of their regular operations with identified staff responsible for oversight. So one of the things that we wanted to clarify was, you know, David, or is your position clearly include managing this type of work? And so Kim did chat with Matt, and I don't know, Kim, if you want to share, you know, what your conversation was with Matt.
Yeah. Basically, I just emailed Matt and asked if volunteer management, coordination, supervision was currently part of the conservation planner job description. And he sent me a copy of the current position description and then his take on it, which is that like it doesn't really mention it, but that it's like pretty heavily implied. And I agree that I think like it's definitely not directly. I think the word that makes me say, no, we're not meeting that criteria right now is like clear, right? I wouldn't say that it's clearly in the job description that the conservation planner does volunteer management. It says things like collaborate with volunteers or work with volunteers. But I think like the idea of like supervision and oversight isn't really currently in there. And I think when I think more broadly about what's probably happening with the volunteers in the departments that have carve outs, I'm guessing there's somebody who's doing like a pretty like significant amount of coordination around things like background checks and certifications, and that like that's like, you know, like officially part of somebody's job, and it's not a small amount of work. And so then I think the next question that Reed asked is like, could that happen? And would it go into the conservation planner's job description? Like, how much work would that be? And then like, is that work already happening? Like, are you already doing like a fair amount of like keeping track of people who are doing like adopt a trail, etc., and it's just not in there and we would have to formalize it? Or would it like represent like a significant new percentage of time in a position description?
So as a point of clarification, is the suggestion that in order to make conservation activities part of Article 4, you know, essentially planning departments responsible, you know, it falls under that Article 4 provision, that you would need someone in the planning division to have a job description that includes volunteer management?
No, we feel like it's pretty clear in the draft policy that that's there.
Mhm.
And I'll just read from the top. I tried to summarize what we're asking for in the opening paragraph. So basically, we would like to either explicitly have conservation volunteer programming that is seasonal, recurring, annual type of stuff be listed as one of the department managed programs. Or if currently we don't comply, that we would like the town manager's office to work with David and with the Conservation Commission to either A, amend the draft policy so that we can comply, if that's possible, or B, help us figure out where those gaps are so that we can address them. And we expect that one of those gaps will be, I mean, this was just me drafting something, assuming that it was in your job description, not knowing. one of those gaps is probably gonna be, well, who's the staff person who's explicitly tasked with the scopes of these programs, the volunteer vetting, volunteer coordinator vetting, if somebody's gonna lead people without a staff person there,
Mhm.
like who's doing that and how do we know that they have the bandwidth, the skills, all that stuff? So we think it's gonna be one of the main things. The other sections, I think we're closer to complying because we do have roles that we within the Conservation Commission and with David talk about. You know, we talk about volunteer coordinators versus volunteers. Coordinators have
Mhm.
additional training and skills. They've maybe worked with the conservation planner enough that the planner knows that there's alignment on scope. There's communication about protocols, things like that. So we have defined roles, we just haven't necessarily published them somewhere, so we think that's probably a hurdle we can overcome. There needs to be protocols and supervision structures and documentation. We have some of that. I know that David keeps track of who volunteers, how many hours we do, what the impact is, those types of things. But do we have protocols listed somewhere that say when people are doing this type of work, they need to do all these things? Kind of in waivers, but not like
Right.
we don't really have them written down as protocols. So we think these things are largely sort of formalizing what's already been informal. But the piece about who's actually gonna be responsible and accountable and have it in their job description and have time to do it, that's the piece that seems to be maybe the biggest gap at this point.
Yeah, I'd say that that's from what Kim and Rita said, that's pretty accurate assessment. If you look at the job description, I think it's written for, if you think back 3 or 4 years, the relationship between the planning office and conservation volunteers, which was very independent, autonomous, ad hoc. Passionate volunteers saying, I want to go do this thing, and the planning office conservation planner person saying, great, I can provide you some support. And as time has gone on and the requirements have for volunteering have increased, and there's been a push to just, as you described, kind of professionalize and standardize and formalize all these different processes. It is clear that there isn't someone, it's, the conservation planner currently is de facto in that role, but there isn't space that has been made, there's no additional hours in the day. So my vision for the long term is that the trail steward, which is currently kind of a summer seasonal position, is something that will continue to be expanded. And continue to increase capacity for formal volunteer coordination. There are office components of that supervision when it comes to vetting and approving volunteers and paperwork, that kind of thing. And then there are field components of the leadership and training, making sure volunteers have a safety briefing and the information they need to go out and do the various things, and empowering the link between empowering designated volunteers who can be those coordinators. This season, I think that we had a nice step forward in terms of for parsnip season. We have one waiver. Somebody who wants to participate signs that waiver once, and they can participate in any activity that's overseen by myself, Isaac, or the designated volunteers Terry Marin and Chapin Kanor. Been doing this for a very long time, and incorporate that education safety briefing component into what they do when they work with new volunteers. So I think that's kind of a miniature model of where we want to go with all of these, but we do need to build out that capacity. And certainly if we're going to meet some of these requirements, like additional vetting, how do you approve a new volunteer coordinator? Is background checks required? Or is, or if they're going to work with, I think it's mentioned in this policy that youth under the age of 15 must be present with a guardian or parent, but that the goal is to have youth 15 and over be able to participate just under the supervision of a coordinator. So what does that mean? What kind of additional vetting is needed for that? So all of those components need space and need time and need formal supervision.
And I should say, I ran some of this language that I threw in here, because this is not something I talked to Kim and Lynn about the youth so much. We talked a little bit about needing to not have just a one size fits all for youth. But I think the youth conversation isn't limited to conservation. there may be some nuances because of the tools and jobs that we're doing as volunteers, but it is a larger conversation for the entire volunteer policy because it affects, well, could a 17-year-old be a coach of a rec team? I don't know, probably not, but we have these different things need to be worked out. And I ran this language by Chapin just to get his opinion from his experiences working with youth as volunteers, and he said he actually thinks there may be a simpler cutoff, which is if you're using tools and not just your hands. So if you're watering, you're not using a tool per se. If you're doing manual pulling of seedlings of buckthorn and you're just learning how to identify it and pull up little seedlings, you're not using tools. But if you're going to use a saw, if you're going to use, any sort of tools like that, hammer to put in stakes, that when you're talking about tools, then you need direct supervision. You need either a staff person, a volunteer coordinator, or a parent and guardian actively working with that child to make sure they're using the tools correctly and all that type of stuff. So that was his suggestion, was like, maybe we can make it even more simple and to say, if you're using a tool, you need direct supervision. If you're as a youth, not based on age, just if you're under 18, then you need direct supervision. And then if you're not using a tool, you don't need direct supervision, which means you can be on site, you can be doing you're part of the orientation, you learn the safety protocols, your guardian signs off for you on the waiver. But then if you're over, 100 feet this way, pulling plants or watering things, you don't need a guardian or a supervising staff person actually watching you put the water on the plant. Like there's somebody supervising on the site, but they don't necessarily be directly supervising the activity.
I like that idea, under 18.
Yeah, so that was just a suggestion he had to maybe make it really simple. So I know time-wise, David, we got to run, but this is also at the stage of like an early draft, even earlier than our invasive stuff. And we want suggestions from the Conservation Commission, because ultimately this would be the voice of the Conservation Commission to the select board saying, like, this is what we think we need in order to be successful with conservation volunteering.
Okay,
Any immediate responses?
yeah, I mean, we are half an hour
Yep.
past.
We can bump it, I mean, I should have anticipated that there'd be more than.
Yeah.
Each of these items was gonna be its own robust
Yeah,
discussion. so-
it seems pretty
I
hard to
yeah.
try and go through those two
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, we can bump the other things.
As long as we have room for the executive
Yeah.
session. I mean, I think the plan that you guys are outlining is a great start. I personally am trying to like manage what clearly, Dave, you have some expertise in like how the navigating of the town rules and then needs to comport to what we're recommending. And it's not clicking for me as to like why is there all this focus on like Article 4 versus just being covered under Article 5? And I can appreciate that there must be some reason for that. But it seems like the main ask in this memo right now is like include all of this in Article 4, which I get the larger point is that like, yeah, department managed volunteer programs, we want conservation programs to be fallen under that. Whereas Article 5 is like ad hoc, basically.
Basically, every date
Yeah.
of work would be its own program under Article 5. Whereas like with its own waiver, its own approval process for scope and stuff, Article 4 is basically delegates to the department to define a scope that can be over a range of time, which is kind of what we're doing with poison parsnip.
Okay, so like,
I think that may not necessarily be true. It may be worth pulling Aaron into a meeting to kind of talk about this idea, because right now what we're doing with parsnip, I should talk to Aaron about it, but I think my initial reading of Article 5 was those ad hoc items don't necessarily have to be day by day, and certainly, the goal with conservation volunteering would be that burden is lifted for seasonal activities. So
And maybe that's
Well, so that's why I suggest red lines and edits to the draft, because there's a line that clearly says. Examples of volunteer programs that are governed by Article 5 include seasonal conservation activities, right? So like you want to strike that, for example, and not. Like seasonal doesn't have to be ad hoc, I guess is kind of what I'm hearing you say, right? Because seasonal increases that sort of burden on a regular enough, but these things need to happen regularly.
Yeah, I guess, part of the challenge, we need to get in the weeds with Erin, because part of the challenge is under,
I'm sorry, who's Aaron?
the assistant
Erin
town
is the
manager.
assistant town
She's the one drafting the policy, exactly.
Okay.
When it was presented to the select board, it seems as though Article 5 would be similar to what we have been doing, with maybe slightly more flexibility on timing, to do things over a range of dates as opposed to a single date. But it basically is more restrictive than if the department is basically delegated
Right.
to oversee the program.
Yeah,
And so,
that part makes sense.
yeah, so there's been a number of times where it feels like David should be able to make a decision, but he's not, because it's not a department program. It has to run through the town manager's office, and that takes time, and then we miss opportunities,
Right.
so we had a chance to do something, and well, we couldn't get it together in time, and so we skip it. So that's the type of thing that seems like on the face of it could be avoided if it was a department program where the department was like, no, we define our scope. We vet our volunteer coordinators, we have protocols,
Right.
can be more nimble than if everything has to go through the manager's
It
office.
seems to me like what you're looking, or what maybe Dave, you could go to Aaron with is a clear mandate from the committee that we would like to see conservation activities managed by the department. What would it take to get those activities into this volunteer policy?
Yeah.
Not sort of relegating to the ad hoc Article 5, which complexifies everything.
Yeah. I think I kind of see there being like two things. One of which is that this memo is essentially saying, this is what we want to see for the town. And I think that's very useful. Understanding, that the conservation wants to see these set lists that certainly can evolve over time, but right now, and at least projecting into the near future, there's a limited set of conservation activities that are happening seasonally. And you'd like to see those happen with the least amount of friction that is possible while covering the bases that town needs to cover. And having established program that will facilitate these programs happening, facilitate new volunteers coming in, facilitate volunteers being able to fill these various roles that you've talked about, with your additional requests that you want to see, a pathway for youth to participate in that. So I think that's all really clear. And then the second question is like, how does that interact with the volunteer policy? Can all these things be met under Article 5? In which case it's a little bit of a moot point, or, does it need to be under Article 4 in the way that you're currently envisioning? And I think that's kind of like the in the weeds piece. So I think it's helpful to communicate both those, and I think, talking with Aaron about this would kind of make that clear.
I think that is a really helpful framework, because having every one of those things be done on an ad hoc, like, put all of your materials together, show all of your burdens of proof for every event, even if that event happens 5 times over a year, that's still something you have to put together every single year under this policy. So like to sort of professionalize it and to sort of have it be under the purview of the planning division means that you don't need to sort of go back to the drawing board every single time. And I think honestly, that should limit the risk from the town's perspective, because you're actually sort of creating a permanent framework around how these things are going to play out year after year.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, regardless of whether, we build the program completely up front, or each year the, smaller programs are kind of renewed, refreshed, reviewed, we still have to meet the evolving town requirements for liability coverage, safety, all of those things. So the town manager's office role is to review those items. So that chain of command in terms of approval is gonna be involved no matter what. But I think from your perspective, it's a question of what's the least amount of kind of friction from the volunteer side, and what's the least amount of kind
Overhead
of
for
staff
you.
time, staff time that's invested in it. And from my perspective, I would agree that those are kind of the objectives. And I think even on the town manager's perspective, that they see that too and understand it, you know, that it's a lot of time. Are there ways we could make things more efficient? And that has been building over time, even in the time that I've seen here. Just the changes in waivers and the way that we've moved towards these seasonal waivers, but it has taken time to identify and put down in writing a lot of things that were just understood or assumed or identified. And so I think that ultimately having this kind of statement about what you'd like to see is going to be helpful no matter what. And then the next step is simply to talk with Aaron about how does this interface with the voluntary policy at present, and then what would it mean over time as this program evolves? Does it become a departmental overseen? Is that necessary to kind of meet your objectives?
So it sounds like a work in progress and nothing to vote on yet, but great.
So what do you recommend, David? Should our subcommittee, Kim and Len and I, meet with you at some point to sort of get into the weeds about how we wanna, the Article 5, Article 4 stuff? When do we meet with Aaron, and what's that agenda look like? Is that?
Yeah, I think, I think that's something we don't have to wait on. I can, I'll speak to Aaron after this and update her on the discussion today and share this draft memo with her. And then I think that, maybe a subcommittee is a good place to start. We could set up a meeting where we can all come together and just talk about the conversation today and kind of what are the next steps as arduous as maybe we think, or is it just some tweaks that need to be made in terms of language to accommodate the goals? And then just knowing that there are things that sort of still need to be figured out. And the whole youth participation question is a big question mark in terms of what would be required to support that, and then where would that staff time and additional resources come from?
All right.
Yeah, I worry that maybe what I put in here for youth is too specific, and there are many different ways we could approach it. I just wanted to put something in, so. David, if I may, maybe I'll just update the youth bit.
Sure.
To be a little bit more general, and then we can share it with Erin and have a conversation. And do you know when she plans to bring this back to the select board?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's all.
When you talk to her, knowing that would be helpful to know whether we need to really sort of get on it, or whether we're in lockstep with her timeline.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So we're gonna table the after the RF and table the mud pond in favor of those subcommittee update discussions. And then
Thank you for the time for those subcommittee updates.
Yeah, no, that's important.
good updates.
And thank you for all the work, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the reasons provided, we'll need to review a motion to go into executive session. Dave, what is the topic that you hope to discuss so that we can get that motion?
So we're discussing a real estate transaction,
Okay,
negotiation of securing real estate purchase or lease options.
all right, can I get a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Thank you.
So your motion should include, after making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage.
Motion moved into the executive session for the reasons Dave just stated.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. And we need a second for that, I imagine.
Second.
Thanks. So moved, we will end the public meeting as of 8:37 this morning, and Kim will be sent an updated link to participate in the executive session. Is that right?
Yes, Kim, are you still with us? Drive shop the pool, we'll call in via phone.
Well, we'll see if that works.
Or,
Does anyone have Kim's number?
yeah. Very cool.
That was 8:31.
Or on speakerphone.
All right, we're gonna end the public meeting and thank you anyone who's watching online for.
Actually, that was a sarcastic remark, but actually